Welcome to Promote Profit Publish. I'm your host, Juliet Clark, and today I have my co-creator for the Perfect Reader Playbook on, and we're going to talk about the genesis of how we came about creating this program, what it's designed for, and who it's designed for. And by the way, pretty much every author or entrepreneur out there. So we're going to talk a lot about that. If you want to go over before you listen, we are giving away the first 3 modules of the course so you can get a really great flavor for it. You can go over to the perfectreaderplaybook.com. And also, the new book coming out on March 3rd is there as well. So you'll be able to buy that in pre-sale. So today's guest is Gary McDermott, and he is a highly sought after motivational speaker, private investor, and serial entrepreneur, professional engineer, and retired naval officer whose journey from humble beginnings to international success is inspiring audiences around the world. And you guys, I don't say that lightly. It truly is. He has things going on in the Philippines and many, many other countries where he's been tapped on to train. You may recognize Gary from his powerful episode, Set Your Goals or Someone Else Will, on season 3 of the Amazon Prime series Speak Up TV. His message of reclaiming your life through intentional goals and financial independence has resonated deeply with aspiring entrepreneurs, especially those rising from underrepresented communities. So this is a really great thing that we have put together here. I hope you guys will listen, enjoy, and go over and check it out. It doesn't matter if you are an entrepreneur who's just beginning, or maybe even an entrepreneur who hasn't had much marketing success. This is also related to books. We have a very layered program that really speaks to the science of marketing. And once you go through it, you recognize, oh my gosh, that is exactly why I haven't been getting traction. So stay tuned for Gary and I and this illuminating episode about the science of marketing and how the Reader Playbook will help. Gary, welcome. So happy to have you here to talk about the playbook. We have put so much work into this.
Right. Excited to be here. Can't wait to share everything we've been working on.
Yes. So we have a new book coming out March 3rd. Gary and I wrote this book around the program that Gary built. And we're just going to talk to you guys today about why it's so helpful. And I think I want to start out with, as part of the report, we ask these questions and it puts out the demographics. And, I think a lot of people don't really, they stop at the demographics. So we've got the demographics of our reader or your business, and then we go into the psychographics. And this is the part that nobody addresses. Tell me how you came up with this on the report, like what you were looking at when you created this part of the report.
Well, with the psychographics and it just comes down to almost anything that I've learned, whether it's in business, just marketing, is you really got to know your audience. You got to know who you're talking to with your message. When you write a book, you're creating a narrative or a message that goes out to somebody. So the starting point is really understanding who is the target reader. And psychographics are an important part of that. Demographics, psychographics, knowing and having clarity on your audience, what excites them, what format they like to read in, how they read it, the pitch, the tone, the manner of speaking, all of that lines up with that target audience. And if you don't know that and you don't understand it, then you might miss the mark.
Yeah, exactly. And marketing is so much about emotion. Like, I don't know if you've seen the new Bud Light commercial, but I watched it this morning and I was literally like, Bud Light is back. Like, if you're a patriotic American, that commercial just really hit your heartstrings. And I feel like that's where so much of this misses, because if you don't know your actual client, you don't know how to impact them emotionally to get them to the point where they improve on that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. So, it's the step of understanding the target audience, the psychographics, the demographics. And then you mentioned, the heartstrings, right? So it's like, what are the pain points? when we write a book or, just in business. So when you look at business, what problem do you solve or what need do you serve? Whether it's a book or a service, when you look at that, there's pain points. You get on those heartstrings and you address those pain points. You take somebody, sometimes you have to take somebody through to relive some of those pain points to get them to get excited about the solution or how they can do something better, quicker, faster, do differently, or achieve something that they want to achieve.
Exactly. In our book and in all of our program, our avatar or our perfect reader is Samantha. So what we're really doing with the psychographics on this is, what are Samantha's core values? What is her decision-making process? That is such a big deal. Like you and I have talked before, I'm an action person. You, being an engineer, are more, that you weigh those decisions very, in a very different way than I do. Because, of course, if you're building a nuclear reactor, I could build one, but you certainly wouldn't want to live anywhere near it. So, uh,
Right. Pros,
so
cons, gas pedal, brake pedal.
exactly, exactly. So it really is important that you know that, those emotional triggers we just talked about, and communication preferences. I mean, we are in such a mass market moment where I was on a panel last night. We were talking about books for Gen Z and millennials are on TikTok, while the rest of us older folks, are in a lot of different other places. So, that factors into what you're doing as well. Let's talk about those pain points. So one of the things that we did in this was actually push through those challenges and pain points together. Talk about how you found those for this mission.
Well, it has to do with it just builds upon everything we did for the demographics, the psychographics, and understanding the target. When you've clearly understood the target audience, the ideal customer avatar that you're working with, then you can put yourself into their shoes and see, what is a typical day like, or what are some of the stresses that they would be with relation to whatever the messaging or the author platform or the book that you have. So it's just taking that foundation of that ideal customer, ideal person, or the most likely person in your audience, and then building upon that, putting yourself in their shoes, and then seeing the challenges from their lens. And that's kind of what we do in this software is do exactly that. We identify the audience and then we put ourselves in that, take ourselves through that journey of what that person's experiencing, how they see the struggle and the challenges or the pain points that they have, so that we can know how to send the messaging so that it can be received as they go through that journey of the pain point, identifying the problem, looking for the solution, and then finding us as the solution.
Exactly, exactly. And, you and I were working on a report this morning. Well, me more than you, but you were just tweaking the software while I was putting the input in. And it was so clear to me that the person we were working with had such vague answers. I know you were probably looking at the report, but had such vague answers. You could tell right away they had no idea what the problem was, who their audience was. It was really like, you can tell when someone just has no idea, and their marketing is just going to fail on that. So that part looks at your primary problem, your current solution to frustrations, purchase decision barriers. Like, if you can't throw objections out there if you don't know, what that actual purchase barrier is. So there's a lot of stuff in there. The time cost, like if you don't buy this today, what's it going to cost you 3 or 4 months down the line? Where will you be? And I love too, you've got transformative goals and desires in here and attempted and failed solutions. And talk about those attempted and failed solutions, because people don't like to admit that they failed sometimes, and it's the key to growth.
And that's one of those things when you talk about pain points, right? It's kind of the elephant in the room, right? When you look at the audience and you look at the fact that now that they are aware of the problem, when somebody's aware of the problem, they've probably tried 1 or 2 or 3 or more different things and still haven't solved the problem. So when you kind of call them out in a constructive way, like we're basically looking at our messaging, and we know if a pain point is one thing, we also should know what are those failed problem like what are some of those failed attempts to solve the problem. Like if you have a problem with your car, and maybe you've tried one or two things off of Amazon, but they weren't made right, and we're the solution, and we need to understand our unique selling proposition and how it might be different or better than some of the other tools out there. So when you look at, now you have a customer that's aware of the problem, looking for a solution, it's most likely that they've tried one or two of these other things. Why would you have a different result when you work with us? Well, it's because of this. So if you map out the stuff that they've probably done without necessarily knowing that they've tried that, there's a lot more likelihood that you're going to stick, because if they haven't tried it, or maybe they've considered trying it, now you've kind of met them where they are and showed them, don't do this. Our solution is different because of this. And you're now matching a solution to somebody that's looking for a solution and is aware of a problem.
Exactly. And you guys said, I mentioned at the beginning about the free 3 modules that we're giving you guys of this. One of them is our avatar is what we call Samantha, is taking yourself through Samantha's day so you understand this. That, is Samantha really busy? When does she do this? What are those goals? How is she going to achieve them? The more you can put yourself in those shoes, the better off Samantha's going to feel like you're talking directly to her. So you've hit that emotional pain point there. The other thing that's in this report that I love, Gary, is how many times have you gone to an event and somebody pitches what they do, which should be concise and to the point, and they're just going on and on and on and on. And you can tell they're explaining the process, not what they're doing. So talk about those two pieces that you did with the pitch and the client diary.
Yeah. So, and this just goes back to, as an investor, I look at pitch decks all the time, and I'm around people that always want to pitch to me an idea or a business proposition. And so what we do here it's a similar conversation. We want to slow that down. And this also goes back to when I used to be a consultant. And I remember when I was kind of just starting as a consultant, and I was taught, don't just jump to the solution space, right? So when you look at the interaction between somebody that's presenting an idea to somebody to get them to decide to move forward with a product or a service, you want to slow that down and try to make it iterative. And so when we just talked about the foundation of the ideal client, and then the different stages of the customer journey, the unaware of the problem, the aware of the problem, looking for a solution, then finding your solution, you kind of want to simplify and streamline that path. So when you look at the pitch, it's, don't just spit something out that could be all over the place. If you can find a way to address that pitch, or ask a question of who you're presenting it to identify where they are in that journey. Are they in the unaware stage? They don't even know they have a problem. Or are they in the stage where they know they have a problem and they just haven't found the solution? They're looking for solutions, and you need to introduce them their solution. So if I'm in that position where somebody's just pitching to me, I would, train somebody, if they're pitching, to kind of ask that question or try to get some type of qualifying information to see where they are. Now, with the software like this, we can do that all for them, because we can basically explicitly tell them, for this stage, unaware of the problem, looking for the solution, this is the call to action. This is the messaging. This is what the content should look like. So we give them a whole package for each phase of the customer journey. And then they can basically, when they pitch, we're training them on that awareness to know, okay, when you're talking to somebody, find out what stage they're in, and then give them this package. And that's kind of how we do it with the software. We give them all the different packages for the different stages of the customer journey, train them so that they can understand the cues of what that audience looks like when they're in each phase. And then now they have the recipe for success to present and affect higher conversion.
Exactly. Before we jump into those phases, because you guys, those phases are we're going to talk about are actually the science behind marketing. And for those of you who think that it's just, spray and pray, that's not going to work. You really need to understand these pillars of this. You put together emotional hooks and triggers. And I like this part because there are 10 triggers or 10 hooks in every single report that we do. And from what you know about your avatar, you can go right to that hook. So is it an attention hook? Is it a fear hook? Is it a trust hook? How did you put that together in a way? Like what was your understanding when you put those together that all 10 of those were important?
This just kind of goes to the science of the brain and then just statistical performance over time, right? So once you've identified that ideal client, and this is the same as just when you look at personality or human behavior and you look over time, there's a lot of repetition and you could probably if you look at just in general somebody's personality and you look at profile around that personality, same as a ideal customer profile, you can probably if you describe somebody's profile, like I'm an engineer, right? And I like to go into the details. So when you just take that profile and you look at statistically over time how that person performs in certain situations, the great thing about AI and large language models is you can kind of get an idea of how that profile will perform, think, answer questions, make decisions, and then when you have that broken down into the customer journey of the unaware, the aware, the looking for the problem, aware of the problem, looking for the solution, all of those different stages, now you can curate the different tricks. Like would a logical would a logical trigger or hook work for somebody that makes decisions 100% of the time emotionally? Maybe not. So we kind of curate some of the different hooks that will have a high degree of working and over and when you look at statistics, there's different buckets of triggers that usually work. And so we just make sure that we have something for each one of those. And then we give that to the user so that they can try something that would most likely work. And then if they need to make an adjustment, they've got 3 or 4 or 5 other ones that can be used in quick succession so that you can over time dial in your strategy and you have more than one tool, more than one skill set to just really apply and make tweaks as you improve and get to know your processes better.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's jump into that science, those awareness phases. So what I see out there is marketing fails because of those 5 phases. People always jump right to phase 4. So I think I've talked about this in other podcasts. There's the unaware phase, the problem phase, solution phase, product phase, and then that is sort of advanced following phase, like I'm your fan now. People jump from I have a course to product, and they don't even get into, and I think awareness is a double. Correct me if you like, I'll get your feedback on this aware. The unaware stage is not only that this person doesn't know they have a problem yet, but for the most part, it's nobody knows me as the expert is alive. So that's actually a twofold unaware program there. I just came out of nowhere and sold you a product. What are your thoughts about that unaware phase? Or do you feel like that too with it's actually a twofold problem?
Well, I do think it's absolutely a twofold problem, and I think that there's also another layer in terms of somebody might know they have a problem, or they might know that the problem that you're telling that they have is a problem, but they also might not know the severity of that problem, or may not care, or the priority of it. And so, just the same as when I used to do consulting for nuclear power plants, and this is kind of where I learned don't jump straight to the solution. You might be in a plant solving a problem and then you see 3 or 4 other problems. Temptation as a consultant that's responsible for getting business and selling to just point out like, "Hey, we can also help you with this," and then you're jumping to the solution. You're already there. They know you, and what I've found and learned the hard way is that's not the way to get somebody to make the decision. And so when it comes to just that concept of if you look at those 4 stages, don't jump to, it's a process. It's a customer journey for a reason. So when we try to shortcut and we see it and it's like it's obvious there's a problem there, the client or the person that you're talking to may also see it's a problem. But in the priorities of knowing that it's a problem and then also understanding that it's a priority for them to solve that problem, if you try to jump that stage and you say, here's a solution, but they haven't went through the whole, like, they haven't even prioritized it or thought about, like, you could solve that problem. It may not be as important. So if you just jump to the solution, like, hey, I can help you with that, sometimes that backfires. Or if you take them through that journey, have them relive the pain, and you look at, okay, hey, we noticed that you have this other thing that something's leaking over here. Is that a, you validate that it's a problem in the level of performance, and then have them go through that journey to see where they are on it, and then maybe present yourself as a solution as opposed to jumping like eager. That's the same kind of slow the game down. Make sure that we validate where they are in the journey and that they've went through those journeys. Whether they make the jump from stage 1 to stage 3 really quickly, we don't want to make that jump for them. So hopefully that kind of helps. But I do agree that there aren't those two problems of understanding the problem, understanding the solution, and you as a solution. They might have both in that phase.
Yeah. And even to take that a step further, a lot of people will come, not a lot of people, not so much anymore since I call this out all the time. Nobody brings me these books anymore, but I used to get a lot of books about happiness. And, this author would come in and say, everybody wants to be happy or everybody needs to be happy. And that unaware stage, not everybody knows they're unhappy yet. And then there's that other piece of that other group of people who holds on to that unhappiness because it's serving them in some way. And they're not going to budge at all. So it's really about getting in there with that right person and identifying that niche within all of that. So that's where you have to really go into that unaware. Now you've made somebody aware. Now you're in the problem. So you're identifying the problem, but it's not you as the entrepreneur or the author. It's that making that person aware that they have a problem. I think that's really the first step because a lot of people are in denial about their problems. I hate to say that.
Right, and then it's maybe it's a step 1B is to make sure that they might know they have the problem, but how important is it for them to actually, how big of a deal is that problem? And that's kind of, I think we're both kind of alluding to is it's one thing to know you have a problem, but take the unhappiness thing. But, like, do you actually care enough that you want to solve the problem, or have you kind of written it off, or just accepted the problem and aren't really looking for a solution? So we have to get them to take that next phase in the journey, and they have to take that step. We can't force them. You can't take the horse to the water and expect them to drink all the time.
Exactly. I relate it. And I know this is probably a very harsh example, but when I talk to self-help authors, it's sort of like an alcoholic. Someone from the outside can't help them. They have to hit rock bottom and really decide. And I think that's the way with all personal growth and development. You start to see something happens to you over and over and over, and it's not a great problem. So you have to, you have to see that it's recurring and maybe it's coming up worse every single time as well. So that's where you have to do that rock bottom hit before you say, okay, where's your solution, Gary? Because I'm now acknowledging I have a problem and I have to make this a priority. So in that solution phase, what are the things we have to present? Because there are a lot of people out there presenting solutions. How do we have to be different?
And it's good that you ask, how do you have to be different? Well, that's the concept of that unique selling proposition, or how are you different and better than the other solutions? And so now that we've taken somebody through, they've understood they have a problem and they want to solve it, we want to, whether they've went through and tried to find other solutions or not, we want to help make that process as short as possible. So whether you've tried solutions or not, and you're looking at our solution now that you've identified us or see us, we're going to also show you through that process. Here are some other solutions that others have tried. Here's how they might have failed, or here's some other approaches, and here's why our approach is better. So we give that as part of the package so that the author or the user can kind of figure out the best way to present that so that you can expeditiously take somebody through that next phase of the customer journey as quick as possible to decide on our solution.
Exactly. So then you go into that product. Before we go to that product, though, I want to talk about those three that we just mentioned. Those require a content journey because you're building trust along the way. So what we just described is not sitting down at a workshop and saying, okay, I've got my audience that I think they're aware. Here's my problem. Here's their solution. You have to actually build content along the way to build the trust to attract those people. And I think that's another misconception that people have about marketing is, okay, we've identified it all. Let's go to our product. And, 3 weeks later, you're presenting a product with having validated and building the audience trust in it anyway. Would you agree with that? Do you ever just go in and say, okay, within days, I may have a problem. Oh, I do have a problem. I want a solution. I mean, it happens over time. It's not a direct decision. And that prompts the entrepreneur or the author to have to take that slowly building that trust.
Right. Absolutely. And the science, the human brain usually takes, you may have to see something 6 or 7 times before you make a decision. If you just look at marketing in general, right? Like direct mail, it's the same concept. So you got to persistently nurture, and depending upon which phase the customer is in of those phases, there's different content for that phase. So if you take both of those concepts, having to see something 6 or 7 times, it could be each person moves through those phases at different times. It may take seeing the same concept or the same pain point a few times to realize that you have a problem and that you need to prioritize it enough that you want to actually look for a solution. Then when you start looking for the solutions, it's the same thing. Like, okay, I saw this one solution, but I'm not quite convinced that that's the right solution. Then I see that marking. Now I'm in the solution phase. I need to see more of that type of content for that phase so that I can register and then make the decision to move to the next phase. And so that's a little bit of why it's important to understand the phases and have an army of content for each phase so that you can, present it one way, present it another way, get somebody to over time move to that phase, to the next phase, to the next phase, and then to ultimately make the buying decision.
Yeah. I'm going to give you guys a great example. I used to be part of a mastermind of women who made over a particular dollar amount. And there was this one woman who would show up every call. Her problem was critical. She'd raise her hand and she would articulate the same problem all the time. I'm overwhelmed. I've got kids. And she would go over the problem every single time and what that problem of the week was related. And it really got to the point after about 6 months that all of us would just roll our eyes like, you're not doing anything about the problem. We're trying to help you. We're trying to give you solutions. And there was just so much resistance to solving that problem. It was almost like she just wanted to complain about it, but she didn't want to solve it. That's sort of exactly what we're talking about here. She was aware on some level she had a problem, but she wasn't, and she was articulating the problem, but she wasn't in that solution phase yet where she was actually pulling the trigger and listening to what we were telling her, the steps. So there was no way you were going to sell her a product because she was skeptical at that point. We hadn't, after 6 months, gotten over that hump of, here's a solution. And all the other ladies on the call had a solution, but she just wasn't, I don't know if it wasn't hearing, wasn't acknowledging, it was very strange. So now we've gotten someone there and we're in the product solution. This is where we actually start attracting and selling to people, correct?
Right. And we're continuing that nurture, hopefully expeditiously, to get them to that next phase of buying.
And then they decide they're going to pull the trigger. And this is where all of us have to have really good onboarding. We have to, they're aware, they're ready to buy. So we have to be great with our messaging there too. We have to be compassionate, empathetic, still run a business. Because if we don't, we're going to be one of those empathetic people who's reducing our price because we feel sorry for someone. We're not setting good boundaries. So get into that phase because that's really more about okay, you've sold, what's your onboarding look like? What's your retention? What are you going to do next?
Right, and that's so you draw the line, you made the sale, and now it's the implementation, the follow through, the customer service, and then the next sale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think you guys can all see, like, this is a very thought out scientific report that we have. The book that we have coming out, The Perfect Reader Playbook, it's actually available in pre-sale over on Amazon right now, is really about that logical teaching you how to do marketing the right way. And yeah, I love that Gary's so methodical. He's put this into a context where we can literally ask you 8 questions, and that report is generated in that. We also, in addition to the book, we have a course that goes along with this. And the course is 15 modules. It's quite a bit. But remember, you're not going to do this all in one day. You're going to work each phase as you go along. Gary, what do you want to add about this?
It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? So the idea is we're learning at the same time we have a software that facilitates the implementation of it. So we work together with the software and with the course to teach and align on the sales process, the customer journey, and then you're also understanding and developing the tools to use for each one of those phases. So it's a combination of having a software that you can work with, but also at the same time learning and understanding the customer journey and how you're adjusting your business and the way you present to hit each phase and get better at conversion and taking customers through that journey as fast as possible over and over again.
Yeah, no, that is, because I see so many authors and coaches, and we get a lot of authors who write the book because they're not getting enough business. And when they come in, they haven't developed any of this, or they've been doing the spray and pray and, looking at the analytics and saying it's just not working. A business is a long-term sustainable business strategy. You don't, just automatically start up and you're making a whole lot of money. And those who do usually don't continue to grow that business. It's sort of a growth spurt, and then they can't get it through. So I think this is really great that, you developed it. I'm so happy I partnered with you. You're brilliant. And I love how you use AI for everything. Guys, Gary uses, he showed me stuff. I just sit there and I just go, my mind doesn't work like that. So it's really illuminating to watch how his mind works in all of this. So, Gary, any last words?
Well, thank you, and I'm excited at the opportunity to kind of help more entrepreneurs. That's a passion of mine, and it's like you said with the course, right, and the tool. So it's important to tools are as only as good as the people that are using the tools. I mean, AI can get you to a certain point, or it can do a lot of things that we couldn't do before. But at the same time, we built the course with the tools so that the business owner, the author, can learn at the same time, because there's no replacement for us as a founder to be able to go out there, have the pitch, talk to the customer. And so by having the tool that makes it very easy, and at the same time having the course where we're learning that and up leveling our skill set as a founder and presenter and the number one marketer for our companies, that's really the secret sauce or the magic of having the tool, is being able to also learn and grow while having a tool and learning and growing to increase our level of comprehension and delivery in the sales and marketing process.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys, you have to keep in mind, this is a science. There is a way to do it that works. If you've ever engaged someone to do Meta advertising or Google advertising, if they are a solid person who facilitates this, they've already told you you're going to spend 3 to 6 months in that unaware phase, because they're hitting people with messages over and over and over. So you've probably already encountered it, and you've gotten really frustrated with that person because you didn't understand what they were doing. And I think that's another area where when people don't understand this, they don't budget appropriately for it. They waste money on things that are instant gratification that just aren't going to work on it. So you guys, you can find all of this at the perfectreaderplaybook.com. If you scroll down to about the middle of the page, you have a choice of buying the book. You can download 3 free modules of the program.
We put the first 3 modules for free so you can actually see the value of it. And then you have the ability to run the report or run the report and take the course. So you can do all of those things depending on what level you really want to work with. So you can see we went from unaware to we went through all our phases too. So Gary, thank you for being on today. And I'm sure everybody's going to see more of you in the near future.
Thank you for having me.